In my policing career in a place like Los Angeles, being with the LAPD, I mean, we were engaged in daily operations where we dealt with the worst of the worst. And some of those situations ended up in deadly force encounters, horrific shootouts, or it'd be, going through doors at hotel rooms or, looking for bad guys. And this is what we did every day. And we went in there with tactical planning, a lot of training, good group of people, some of the best men and women I've ever encountered. And we were out putting the work in. Well, one day, and I'm not going to get into the whole backstory, but I was off duty and I was involved in recapping some administrative stuff. And I decided to stop by to grab a bottle of wine from a liquor store in the North Hollywood area of Los Angeles. And I walked in, and I was preoccupied, right? And I'm a guy that's always thinking tactics, always has my gun with him. You're a police officer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I left my gun in the glove box of my car because, I figured I was on my way home. I wanted to be more comfortable driving. And I never put my gun back on. I entered this liquor store. And when I walked in, I looked around and I didn't see anybody, but I was preoccupied. That should have been a clue to me. And so I walked down the aisle and I sensed a figure behind me. And I turned around and it was a guy with a gun pointed right at me. And he said, "Come with me and I won't hurt you." And I looked around, and this is not an unusual situation in Los Angeles. And it just about a couple years before, the same situation happened to an officer who didn't have his gun. They found his police ID and they executed him. So this quickly went through my head, like, hey, this is a man with a gun here, but there's more of them. They've obviously taken everybody out of sight, and they sent this guy out to get me. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to be dead if I go along with the situation. So I look at him. He looks at me. I do a quick scan. I see a brick wall with a door in the far corner. So I literally do a false belly flop into the next aisle. I go airborne. And now we're at the end of aisles. And so I'm running, and he's paralleling me, but we're at the end of aisles. And I get to the back door, and I turn to face it and get through it, and I realize it's just a brick wall protruding. And I'm like, hey, a lot of my training came back to me, the will to survive. And I said, hey, you can take a gunshot wound. You can survive a bullet. You've got to get out of here, even if you start shooting. So I began to run, and I remember saying, I wish I had a weapon. And as soon as that, I pulled a champagne bottle off a wall as I was running. And now I'm like, hey, I'm going to meet this guy at the front door. It's going to be shots fired there. So as I turned the corner to come down, and I see the suspect there, he turns to face me, and this really heavy set guy in a red shirt walks in and sets off like the bing, the front door alarm. And the suspect turns for a minute. They look at the guy in the red shirt. The guy in the red shirt sees him with the gun, gets out. And by the time the suspect turned around, I was colliding with him to run him over. And I literally ran him over. And as I ran out, my car was there. And I was like, there's a 7-Eleven kitty corner. And I said, I'm not going to be able to get to my gun. These guys are going to come out shooting. I ran kitty corner. And so I jumped over the counter, and I'm like, LAPD, I need your phone. This is a little bit before like the smartphone. And I put in a 911 call. Of course, being Los Angeles, it rang 37 times. I'm exaggerating, but they did not pick up. And then the RTO, the radio transmission, or the EBO, the EBO is a 911 operator, gets on like, what's your issue? And I said, hey, off-duty LAPD, there's a takeover robbery at this liquor store. Here's the streets. And literally, when that call goes out, officer needs help, 3 police stations from LAPD cleared out, right? And as I looked across the street, the suspect came out with a gun. 2 others came out with AK-47s. And they jumped into a pickup truck. And so what had happened is 10 minutes before I'd walked in, they did a takeover robbery. They took everyone to the safe. They proned them out at gunpoint. And they took everybody's wallets. They got in the safe and they got 30 grand. And then this crew ended up doing 40 more robberies before they were captured a year later. Same style of just aggressive, takeover robberies. And I was lucky to survive. If I had my gun and began to shoot it out earlier, I might not have made it. Somebody would have come out with a AK-47 and I would have been engaged in that. I like to think I would have made it. Later, when they showed me the video and they were doing the investigation, the captain said, hey, if you ever get a chance to do this over again, don't do this over again because you're not going to make it. But in your context question, what if I would have been there with my kids? I couldn't have put up that type of acrobatics and aggressive-ness, and I'd have been there with my kids. It would have been a different type of circumstance. And that's not to say I wouldn't have made a move, but, like you and me, we're not going to get our kids injured in such situations. We'll do everything not to do that, right? So sometimes you could have the tactical ability and whatnot, but you just can't react to it based on the situation.